All right, we are live.
All right, thank you everybody. I want to welcome you to the community prep meeting from Councilmember Shama Sawant's office. My name is Adam Zimkowski. I want to welcome everybody watching. We're here, of course, to continue our fight for renters' rights, for renter protections, including rent control. But today in particular, we're here to pressure Seattle City Council members to vote yes on 6 months notice for any rent increase and on relocation assistance. We want to make landlords pay 3 times rent anytime a renter's rent is raised by 10% or more, and they have to move as a result of it. We want to make landlords pay 3 times rent to facilitate all the moving costs that come with that significant rent increase. So thank you so much for joining us today. I also want to give a special thank you to everybody who's watching today who came out on Saturday in spite of the rain to rally for rent control. We saw more than 200 people come out to make that demand. And of course, we were also talking a lot about the need to vote for 6 months notice for any rent increase and relocation assistance. We want to make it very clear to council members today, we don't want any excuses. They've had the legislation for weeks, so there should be no delay, no watering down. Vote yes on both of those renter protections today. We have a good lineup. Of course, people know that in about 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes, we're going to be going to watch the Seattle City Council meeting. Public comment will be the first part of the meeting, of course, and we want to make these demands heard. Obviously, people might know already, we sign up for public comment 2 hours before, but if you haven't already signed up, we want to, in just a minute or two, show everybody how to sign up for that public comment. It's definitely not too late. You can sign up throughout the course of this meeting, but at 9:30 is when we'll go to the City Council, seattlechannel.org, to watch that and to make our comment. Before going any further into our agenda, where we're going to show people how to sign up for comment and also just talk more about the political context, about why we need these demands. Before we go into any more depth about that, I just want to take a moment to, on behalf of Councilmember Sawant's office, express solidarity with Seattle's unionized carpenters who are currently on strike. They're fighting for higher wages, among other things, to keep up with the skyrocketing costs of living in Seattle and the surrounding areas. Councilmember Sawant has released a statement of solidarity, which we'll put in the chat just here shortly. We were also thrilled to have several carpenters at Saturday's rally for rent control and renters protections, including a fantastic speech from rank and file union members. And it's not, of course, a coincidence that we saw this solidarity. We're going to go into specifics in a moment, but this vote, these votes, this movement that we're building for renter protection is coming at a critical time where we've seen 25.6% rent increases since just the start of 2021, which is an additional $4,500 per renter per year on average that will be going to corporate landlords and not staying in the pockets of working class renters. And just yesterday, we got a Census Bureau report that was reported on 60,000 Seattle area renters are behind in their rent. 80% of those renters are behind by over 1 month, and they're facing eviction potentially, as the eviction moratorium is set to expire in just about 9 days' time. So we're facing a massive crisis for renters, and it's coming at a time when corporate landlords are also making huge profits. We can win things. We can win 6 months notice for any rent increase. We can win relocation assistance, but it's going to take pressure. It's going to take our movement. And in order to do that today, we want to sign up for public comment, and we want to tell council members we expect them to vote yes on this legislation. So maybe most people have already signed up, but for those who have not already, I want to go to Nick Jones, who's a community organizer in our office, who will take just a few minutes to tell people how they can sign up before we come back and continue to talk about the political demands that our office and our movement's waging. So Nick, if you're ready, go ahead and show people how they can sign up for public comment if they haven't already.
Thank you, Adam. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Jones. you've heard my voice before, gone through this process with us. It's definitely, like Adam was saying, not too late to sign up for public comment, to really, bring the voice of our movement into this meeting, as we really need the voice of our movement to be at every meeting regarding, these fighting demands we want to win. So to sign up, if you haven't before, you're going to want to find this webpage. Super straightforward. Whatever browser you're using, you should just be able to type in like Seattle public comment or public comment Seattle. It should be the first link here, the seattle.gov link. Just go ahead and click that. And because the public comment sign up went live at about 7:30, we don't have to wait for this form to appear. You should scroll down and see all of this right here. And we just need to fill this out, just in full. You fill it out with me. Hopefully, if you haven't done so already, just pull it up right now. We can do this together. Make sure that you're able to bring your voice to this meeting, even if you end up not being able to speak at 9:30. It's certainly good to still add yourself to the list. We can really put as much pressure as possible on the city council. It's just, the whole email. That will be where you'll get the Zoom link. That'll be sent to you. So you can click on that and it will bring you into the Zoom call where the committee meeting is going to be happening. So you can listen in and speak. Their phone number, whatever the last 5 digits are, that's how they're going to identify you. I think it's 48. Yeah. So whatever your actual phone number you're calling in with, definitely put that in there. Just click this and then you can kind of put whatever you want for this part of the agenda item you're addressing. You can say something like rent control now, or we need 6-month rent notices. Really anything that speaks to the demands we want to raise, I think is very powerful. Because even if you end up not being able to speak or in maybe different public comment settings where there's a really long list, they don't get to everyone, the council members will still see who signed up and what they wanted to speak for, and being able to echo our demands in those lists can be very powerful. Then just click submit and you should get an email. And then, be ready to speak in about 22 minutes. That's about it. And I will kick it now back over to Adam. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Nick, for showing us how to sign up for public comment like that. We'll probably refer back to you one more time before things end, just because new people come, and it's not a super straightforward thing to sign up for public comment to make our community voice heard. And obviously, that's by design. They want to make it, the council members, the city establishment wants to make it as difficult as possible for the demands of working people, working class renters, marginalized communities, the people who are most impacted by the skyrocketing rents, by the rampant displacement that we're seeing. They want to make it harder for us to make our voice heard, which is precisely why a socialist office, a movement building office, does just the opposite. And to that end, we have these community prep meetings to show the nuts and bolts about how to give public comment, but far more importantly, in reality, to provide our movement with the arguments we need to win the most for working class renters, the most for ordinary people, for the LGBTQ community, Black and Brown communities, who of course we know are disproportionately impacted by the influence that corporate landlords have on policy in the city. So let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit more about this committee meeting and the votes that are set to take place. As we've noted, our demand for rent control, we've been making all year long. I believe it was in May, we started off with a really dynamic rent control press conference with dozens of people from all kinds of different communities calling for rent control. But along with that, for a renter's bill of rights, for real renter protections, that while we build this movement for rent control, we continue to also address the other ways that landlords in the city establishment, the biggest businesses, are able to make life difficult for working people while making more profit. 2 of those renter protections are extremely straightforward. They're extremely critical, and yet to this day, Seattle City Council members which we should recognize. The Democratic Party runs the Seattle City Council. Our movement has been making these demands for years in reality. Today is the day when council members finally will be voting on this. 6 months notice for any rent increases is a basic demand that working people need. When we're out there on the streets gathering signatures for rent control and then also talking about basic renter protections, the idea that working people, particularly families and renters who've been living in places for a long period of time, they need more than just 2 months, which is currently the law is that 2 months is all that landlords have to give renters when they're going to raise the rent. That means in a city like Seattle or in a state like Washington, where there's not only is there not rent control, but there's a state ban on rent control, that means that working people could be subject to rent increases of 10%, 50%, 500%, and as a result have to move, and that they would only get 2 months notice in order to do that. That's ridiculous. It's absurd on the surface. We're calling for 6 months notice for any rent increase. We have legislation that's been at the city council for weeks now. They've been discussing it. So there's no excuse. There's no reason why council members can't make that vote today. And that's what we want people watching here today to demand the city council do. That today at the Sustainability and Renters' Rights Committee, that council members vote out of committee this legislation to require landlords give 6 months notice for any rent increase as a basic requirement, a basic need for working class families to be able to just have any sense of stability in their housing. We also have legislation to require landlords to give relocation assistance for any significant increase that causes tenants to move. This is a big one that has huge support when we're talking to ordinary people, working class renters, which we have been for weeks and weeks, for months in reality. The idea that you can get an increase of 10%, 50%, as we were saying, and all of a sudden have to pay hundreds of dollars more on many occasions. And in reality, on average, just since the start of the year, 25.6% is the average rent increase. The idea that renters have to move and then on top of that have to pay first and last month's rent, security deposit at their new place, plus all those moving costs. It's a real burden that is shouldered by working class renters and then the whole community, as we've seen displacement, as renters are being forced to move every year or every other year because of the skyrocketing rent, because of the lack of rent control. This has a huge impact on thousands and thousands of working class renters. And we should remember that renters are the majority of this city. Hundreds of thousands, more than 400,000 renters are impacted by the fact that these laws don't exist to protect renters, but instead landlords are given free rein to raise rents by significant amounts, and they're doing just that. We're talking about corporate landlords, big landlords making hundreds of millions of dollars per year, jacking up rents by significant amounts, forcing major costs on working class renters. We want to change that. We want the corporate landlords to have to shoulder some of that burden in the sense of to the tune of 3 times rent. Not only will that lift a real burden for renters in terms of the moving costs that they incur, it will also be a deterrent to landlords raising rents by those significant amounts. So these are the demands that we're making. These are basic, reasonable demands. We've talked to literally thousands of renters, also homeowners, struggling small businesses who support these. But we know also that council members have heard these things before. And there's already indication, as we've seen numerous times before on the legislation that we put forward and that we've actually been winning, we'll expect council members to try to water down, to try to further delay. We've already heard Councilmember Juarez earlier this year indicate opposition to the idea of 6 months notice for any rent increase. We've also heard whispers or hints that there will be attempts to reduce that to 4 months. We can beat back these attacks. We can win. but it's going to take a movement, and it's going to take a real united and focused pressure on council members. And of course, today's committee meeting, today's testimony, which begins in under 15 minutes, is a really great opportunity to do that. One of the things, and I'm going to move over, I'm going to pass it on to Alvin in our office, Alvin Maragori in our office. He's a community organizer. One of the things that oftentimes for renters, as we're talking to them about these demands, which seem so reasonable, so obvious, but it's hard to see how we can actually win them given the fact that they are so obvious, yet we still don't have them. Landlords are still able to raise rents by 25% with impunity, essentially in broad daylight, taking thousands of dollars from the people who need it most, working class renters, ordinary people, and pad their massive profits with it. A lot of times, working class people, it's hard to see how we can actually overcome this, but the reality is we can. We do it by building a movement, and our movement is extremely dynamic, strong. There's a lot of people involved in it. Alvin Maragori, our community organizer in Councilmember Sawant's office, is in a really good position to have seen the strength of this movement. We're going to have him talk a little bit right now about the huge support that exists for these renter protections and rent control. We saw the rally this Saturday. We've also collected thousands and thousands of signatures over the last months. So let's hear from Alvin for a few minutes. And also remember that in just about 10 minutes time, we're going to be going to give comment to City Council. So let's go ahead and hear from Alvin right now.
Hi everyone. I'm Alvin, and these past couple months that we've been collecting rent control signature, we started at the very beginning of the summer and have been in the streets pretty much every single week, almost every single day, going to farmers markets, going to protests, going to rallies like Juneteenth, Emoja Fest, and across the board, there has been overwhelming support among working class people, especially among renters, students, low-wage workers, people working minimum wage. It is like for working people, like a very no-brainer that landlords should not be able to gouge so many thousands of renters, especially during a pandemic. But in reality, this is a basic protection that all working people should be able to live and work in the same neighborhoods and be able to afford to stay in their own homes. So throughout our signature collection, we have collected nearly 15,000 signatures just in the last few months, which really demonstrates the urgent, the burning need that a lot of renters are facing. Adam just referenced, the 25% that rents have gone up. Just this year, it's putting an absolutely absurd burden, and so many people are nearing the breaking point. And if this eviction moratorium, is set to expire, in just a few days, it is going to be an absolutely devastating situation for so many thousands of families, which is also why, we urgently need to pass these two bills that are put before the City Council today to ensure that people have enough time to come up with the money for a rent increase. And if a landlord forces a tenant to move out, we definitely need some assistance to move to a new place, because we all know how expensive the prospect of moving is. And at the rally this Saturday, we had over 200 people in attendance, even in the pouring rain. It was a little bit cold out, but again, that just shows the dedication that so many people are inspired by this demand to come out on a Saturday and send a very clear message to the political establishment. We were joined by so many community speakers from labor leaders in the Carpenters Union to community members and faith leaders, all people who have been a part of the housing, the fight for affordable housing, and lending their voices and joining the already thousands of Seattle renters in demanding rent control. And now, of course, the next step for rent control movement is forcing the Seattle City Council to take a vote on this. And key to that is by building pressure, grassroots pressure that's capable of putting rent control on the official schedule to be taken for a vote. And just like all of our other victories that we've won this year, even with massive opposition from other council members and real estate lobby, when we passed the guaranteeing everyone the right to counsel if they're facing an eviction. We know it's going to be on the strength of our movement, relying on working class people, our ability to send emails, to testify in public comment. If hundreds of us do that, we can create a situation where the council members, despite all their desires, they cannot ignore us. And that's the next step for a movement, is by building this massive pressure for rent control, while also at the same time winning these other super important protection demands like 6 months notice and eviction relocation assistance. So I'm really excited of the massive support that we've been able to see among the community, and I think that we're really well poised to launch a very, very strong battle against the real estate developers and landlords to win rent control. And on the basis of our strength will be the determining factor on whether we get this passed. So with that, I'm gonna kick it over to Nick. We have a few minutes just before the public comment opens up. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Alvin and Adam and everyone for being here. I just wanted to speak for just a minute or two, a few minutes about how to give strong public comment, because that's what we're here today to do, is use the collective pressure and force we have is every day, bring class people, to bring that to bear on the city council to force them to act. Like we know in the past, so many of the things we've won, from like 15 to any of the renters' rights stuff, maybe started with only having council members Sawant voting for it, but ended in these 9-0 votes. And that's because when our collective movements can come together and stand together around powerful demands, and we can organize to use our voice to call on the council to pass those, then we can have these pretty incredible victories. And that's what we want to do again here. It's just to win some of these, I think, vital pieces of the renters' Bill of Rights that we've all been fighting for through this whole year. So hopefully everyone has already signed up for public comment. If you hadn't, definitely do that now. It's not too late. But first, usually you're gonna only have about a minute to 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes here. So we want to pack a punch in a short amount of time. So you're gonna say your name, but really importantly, you belong to a union, community organization, a political organization, anything that speaks to ordinary people rallying together in common cause to fight together. That can have a really massive impact. Definitely bring that in. Let the council know that you're not just 1 or 2 people here or there, but someone that is organized, that wants to fight for these things, that has community behind them. That can be very powerful. Definitely. Also say, when you come in, say, thanks to Councilmember Swan for bringing this forward. That kind of stuff, like calling people by name who we see are like bringing things forward that we need, does also put massive pressure on the council. Really shows them that people are listening to who's actually fighting for them. They prefer to have everything done in the shadows so they can claim credit or whatever afterwards, regardless of who actually did the fighting. When we can call them out specifically, and that way it really does put serious pressure on them. So definitely do that. And definitely bring in some of these talking points that we've brought here today. That's really what we want these community meetings to do, is equip people to feel really confident to speak in these meetings with kind of these not only figures, but stories and experiences about the necessity of fighting for these things. And if you have, a personal story that can really make concrete and real the necessity for things like universal rent control, 6 months requirement for rent, or 6-month notice for any rent increases, or the necessity of economic eviction assistance to, make sure that renters can keep their heads above the water when these drastic rent increases come down. All that can be massively impactful. Want to bring that in, make it real, and really demand and say this is not something that we want because we're greedy renters or something. We're fighting for our lives, we're fighting for our communities, and this is something we absolutely need to make sure that we can survive. So I just wanted to hopefully give people kind of an oversight and to how to effectively bring that in, name, organization, thing council members want, calling people out, and bring in like those powerful figures, your personal experience. We can really make a serious impact. So look forward to hearing from all of you during public comment in just 3 minutes here. With that, I will send it back to Adam.
All right. Thanks so much, Nick. We've just got a couple of minutes before we go back, and I think that pretty much everything that needs to be said has been said about why it's so important for council members to pass 6 months notice for any rent increase and also relocation assistance. I just did want to leave folks with one last statistic from that Census Bureau report that noted 60,000 Seattle area renters are facing eviction here in the coming months. There was also another stat that said 64% of Seattle area renters believe that there is a likely or somewhat likely possibility they will be evicted in the next 2 months. That's 2/3 of Seattle area renters are not at all assured that their housing will be secure within the next 2 months. So if there's any doubt about how we need to build a movement, how critical it is that renters have a collective space where we can organize and then make our demands heard on the city council, also on the mayor, also on the governor and the state legislature, who we know also has to overturn this ban on rent control. We desperately need these renter protections. We desperately need to fight precisely because thousands and thousands of working class renters, especially Black and brown communities, LGBT communities, immigrant, non-English speaking, marginalized communities need these protections. We need council members to stand with working class renters and not big landlords. So in just about a minute, Councilmember Sawant, Sustainability and Renters' Rights Committee is going to begin. We're going to hear public testimony, hopefully from many of you. Thank you so much again for joining us for this community prep meeting. Thank you again to so many of you, more than 200, for coming out during that rally on Saturday. Please keep your eyes open. In 2 days, we're going to have a special committee meeting at 5:30 p.m. That's Thursday. If council members refuse to vote on it today, we're going to give them another opportunity. They're not going to be able to get out of this, to vote for this critical legislation. But hopefully we'll see you in a minute, and hopefully we'll win this 6 months notice for any rent increase, relocation assistance, and then of course building our movement for rent control. Thank you so much for joining Councilmember Sawant's community prep meeting in solidarity.